Tonight, the culmination of a 6-month-long joint investigation between this program and the Sydney Morning Herald and Age newspapers. We reveal a corporate scandal involving Australia's largest casino operator, Crown, which until recently was the pride and joy of reclusive billionaire James Packer. Now, though, he's offloading his stake in Crown, with its reputation tarnished after 19 of its employees were jailed for breaking gambling laws in China. But as you'll see, the company only has itself to blame. We've obtained tens of thousands of documents from inside Crown's corporate headquarters. They show a lust for profits-driven, arrogant culture where almost anything, including courting people with ties to the criminal underworld, was not only allowed, but encouraged. Investigative reporter Nick McKenzie explains.
I think I'm the luckiest person in Australia.
I'm a jet set player, yeah, I'm doing life right.
James Packer was certainly dealt a great hand in life, and he played it well. Betting billions on the company he inherited from his father, he turned Crown Casino into one of the world's gambling jewels. But as any punter knows, winning is addictive. And Packer wanted more.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've made many mistakes in my life, but investing in China is not one of them.
Packer set out to conquer the high roller market by luring Chinese VIP gamblers to our shores. And he made no apologies for his bold plan.
I'm really sick of people looking at me as though our business is some sort of sinful business. I am hugely proud of our business.
But what Packer didn't know was that others in the company, executing his vision, would take Crown down a very dangerous path.
It was all about making money.
Yes.
Even though they were breaking the law in China.
I don't think they worried it.
This is the story that Crown Casino does not want you to see. And that's because of one of the largest leaks ever of corporate data to Australian media. 60 Minutes, The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald have obtained tens of thousands of Crown's internal files and documents from sources close to Crown's Melbourne headquarters. It's a jackpot of highly sensitive and damaging information that not only reveals the secret inner workings of Australia's biggest casino, but also its ties to Chinese crime bosses and Communist Party figures.
These people are well funded and some of them are quite dangerous.
You'd fear for your life.
I'm not suicidal at this stage.
It involves the most powerful drug syndicate in the world.
Bundles of cash coming out of a plastic bag.
I look at this and there are neon lights flashing.
Money laundering and sex trafficking rings.
You know that these women were being held there against their will.
But most disturbing of all, our investigation proves how Crown's hunger for profits endangered its own people and exposed Australia's national security to grave risks.
Well, who was coming on these flights? My immediate reaction was there was an enhanced risk.
Crown's only concern was getting caught.
It was here in Hong Kong that Crown launched its ambitious strategy to crack the Chinese high roller market. But things went terribly wrong. And to find out why, we're going to meet a Crown whistleblower who's taking a massive risk in speaking out.
2 years ago, Jenny Jiang was told to keep her mouth shut.
Crown Resort staff detained in China on alleged gambling crimes.
To never speak of the events that led to her and 18 of her colleagues being locked up in a Chinese jail.
The Crown workers have already spent more than 8 months in prison.
Do you think Crown exposed its Chinese staff to danger?
Yes. Money is way more important than the staff.
But in a world where cash is king, Jenny's silence could not be bought. Not even by Australia's most powerful gambling empire. By speaking out now, she risks her personal safety. But as Crown's keeper of secrets, Jenny believes Australians deserve to know the truth.
To me, it's like I don't hate, but I feel upset with this #1, biggest hotel casino in Australia. And are they doing the right thing or are they doing the good thing?
From Chinese housewife to a prisoner of China's infamous detention system, Jenny's story is terrifying. But it began innocently enough in April 2011, when she landed a job with Crown Casino as its administrator in Shanghai. Did you like your job?
It's different world, as I've seen. It's completely different kind of job. It's like wow world.
Why a wow world?
Because you never seen so many wealthy people.
The first thing you need to know in this complex chain of events is simple. Both gambling and promoting gambling is illegal in mainland China. The law seems clear, yet Crown thought it could sidestep it by pretending to lure wealthy Chinese gamblers not to its casinos, but to its luxurious Australian hotels. Hotels that just happen to have high roller rooms attached to them. Gaming analyst Ben Lee says he always suspected Crown was secretly promoting gambling, a suspicion proven by their internal documents.
The facade may have been that of marketing a resort, but I think anybody can see through that facade quite easily and very, very quickly. They were not there to market the golf course or the restaurants in Melbourne. They were there to market the gaming activities.
Crown says it was never promoting gambling in China. Was that a lie?
Yes. It was a lie.
Jenny became a trusted player in the secretive and increasingly risky operation Crown had set up across mainland China. It was illegal, but it was also lucrative. Rich Chinese enticed to Crown's lavish Australian resorts were losing bucket loads of money in its casinos.
How much money are we talking about?
Some customers losing maybe 10 million in 15, 20 minutes.
Losing 10 million in 15 minutes?
Yeah, which is I was surprised about what kind of job I'm taking.
Big losses were great news for Crown, and senior managers kept pushing their Chinese staff to promote gambling to more and more groups of wealthy punters. It was an order that put the entire team in grave danger.
They are the only casino operator that I know of who has open marketing offices in China. Nobody else has.
Why was that so dangerous on the mainland?
When you open marketing offices in China, you are exposing yourself. And for a Westerner to think that they can get away with what they've done is absolute arrogance and hubris.
Selling fast and selling hard was the Crown way, as our mountain of leaked data reveals.
Sell to the end. Fight every battle.
Indoctrinated in a Wolf of Wall Street sales culture, staff were told to offer big gamblers big favours for punting at its Australian casinos. High rollers got gold iPads, Hermes scarves and Dunhill cufflinks. Even free gambling cash known as lucky money, and free of charge private jet flights. The more money they gambled, the more gifts they received.
Assist with immigration and kids' school. Assist with property investments. Increase credit line.
And the Crown sales staff weren't forgotten either. They got huge bonuses for netting the big whales.
We have an opportunity to destroy the competition.
But they were also punished if they failed to reel them in.
Outwit, out-hustle our competition. Keep up the intensity. To crush our goals, we need to keep the pressure on.
If people's not really good, just let them go.
You get sacked if you're not selling. So on the one hand, staff are thinking, geez, we're breaking the law here in China for Crown, but on the other hand, Crown's paying them big bonuses.
Yes.
It's a tough road to walk if you
Yes.
need money for your family.
You taking the risk to doing this job, and you don't know what happened the next day.
What could happen to Jenny and her colleagues by doing what Crown demanded of them became obvious in mid-2015, when Chinese police swooped on the staff of a Korean casino. The message it sent should have been loud and clear for Crown.
In China, my experience is the Chinese government often sends a warning. A pebble is dropped in the water, the ripples go out, and if you're tuned in, you can see that something has changed.
Steve Vickers is the former head of the Royal Hong Kong Police Criminal Intelligence Bureau. He says the arrest of 13 Korean casino workers showed just how serious President Xi Jinping was about cracking down on gambling promotion, which was the unlawful activity at the very heart of Crown's secretive China operation.
To me, that's a wake-up call. That would be, oops, things have happened.
I mean, a bunch of Korean casino operators were arrested in broad daylight. Isn't that one hell of a wake-up call?
That's a big rap on the knuckles from the Chinese government. But it's difficult to stop momentum sometimes.
After the Koreans were arrested at the airport, did Crown slow down its recruitment, its promotion of gambling in China?
No.
Even though another casino had come unstuck, Crown kept selling.
I don't think they worried it.
But Crown's internal emails show it was becoming worried. But rather than down tools, executives devised other plans to circumvent the Chinese gambling laws. Staff were told to be more under the radar, to meet VIP gamblers in smaller groups.
We will be applying for Hong Kong, Singapore work permits for all of our China staff.
And to obtain foreign travel documents, so it looked like they weren't even working in China.
This is purely a precautionary measure that will allow you to say that you work out of an overseas location and are on business travel in China.
Jenny saw it for what it was and was scared.
We feel like we can be arrested anytime because we are doing the same kind of business.
What did you mention to the big Crown managers?
We do talk to our management, the head management, and saying like, this is a little bit dangerous for us. And the company told us we are safe and we are not doing the illegal thing.
So Crown said, it's going to be okay.
Yes.
Did you believe them?
We don't. Everybody feels really nervous.
Coming up.
Jenny's uninvited visitors.
That's a really horrible memory to me.
As Chinese agents bash down her door.
I feel really helpless, desperate.
Plus exposing Crown's dirty secrets.
Do you think Crown knew you were breaking the law?
That's next on 60 Minutes.
Jenny Jiang never imagined she'd end up a convicted criminal and spend time in prison, all thanks to her bosses at Crown Casino, a world away in Australia.
I feel like they need to feel guilty, not myself.
Do you think Australians know the full story about Crown?
I think they know part of it, but not all of it. For us, it's never gonna forget in our life. You're never gonna wipe it out.
Yeah.
It was 2016 and Crown thought it had beaten strict laws which banned the promotion of gambling on the Chinese mainland. Its China-based sales staff were actively trying to lure wealthy gamblers to Australian casinos.
I believe, as other salespeople believe, that we've been told by our company that we're not doing anything illegal.
You were told by Crown you were not doing anything illegal.
Not doing anything illegal.
Was that a lie?
Right now, I realize it is a lie.
That lie finally caught up with Crown and 19 of its staff on the night of October 13, 2016. It was close to midnight and Jenny was at home getting ready for bed when Chinese police burst through her front door.
That's a really horrible memory to me.
As Jenny watched on helplessly, a team of 5 police officers ripped apart her apartment, seizing her laptop, phone and work files.
I feel really panicked. I feel really helpless. I feel really desperate.
Jenny was arrested on the spot and taken into police custody.
I couldn't get any help, but I saw all my colleagues, which is that night, and I feel like, well, this is gonna be a big issue for us.
Crown Resort staff detained in China on alleged gambling crimes could remain...
Jenny was held along with 18 of her colleagues who'd also been raided that night.
The Crown workers, including 3 Australian nationals...
Swept up in the busts were 3 Australians, including one of Crown's top executives, Jason O'Connor, the head of the casino's international VIP program. He was captured by police as he tried to flee China.
Jason, that night when we been arrested, he's tried to leave Shanghai. He got on the plane and they caught him on the plane.
He was sentenced to 10 months jail.
The Crown arrests sent shockwaves around the world.
Have you spoken directly to James Packer about this and what's been the nature of that discussion?
I've been in contact with Mr Packer. There have been reports that it's related to gambling in the casinos, evidently, but beyond that, we don't have any specific details.
Crown feigned surprise, but it was not a shock for the company. We've obtained tens of thousands of internal Crown records. A massive leak which reveals that before the raids, Jenny and her colleagues were actually told what to do if Chinese police burst through their doors.
Make sure no company documents, materials, are left in the room. Do not, under any circumstances, give any official office badges or passkeys, or grant any official further access to the internal office area, except as permitted by management.
What did Crown tell you before you were arrested? What did Crown tell you to do if you were arrested?
Do not say anything. Do not cooperate with the government.
Crown said, if you're arrested, don't cooperate with the Chinese government.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Crown secretly knew that you
I think they do know about this.
They knew you were breaking the law.
But they just don't tell the staff because they want the staff bring the money over and to keep it working for them.
They were happy for the Chinese staff to break the law if the money was flowing over.
Yes.
Crown was right to be worried about police seizing its confidential company files. As we've discovered ourselves, Crown's internal data tells an extraordinary story. It reveals just who Crown was getting into bed with, as it lured China's wealthiest people to gamble in Australia. To understand Crown's duplicity, we need to go to Macau. This is the only place in China where you can legally have a bet at a casino. In the rest of the country, it's illegal, as is any promotion of gambling or debt collecting. Crown tried to work around those laws. It not only used its own staff to hook the big whales and bring them to Australia, it hired Macau agents known as junket operators to do its dirty business. These junket middlemen not only find Chinese VIPs for Crown, they lure them to Australia by arranging luxury travel and millions in gambling credit. They also do whatever it takes to collect bad debts.
It is illegal for a mainland Chinese to bring more than a very modest amount of money across the border. What the junkets do is they assist in capital outflow from the mainland. They assist in the identification of punters. They facilitate their travel and their arrival. And then there's one other key issue. It's illegal to collect debts, so it's common sense. You're not going to send the Boy Scouts around to collect debts. You're going to send somebody else around.
And here is where it gets even murkier. Former Royal Hong Kong Police Commander Steve Vickers says many junket operators are controlled by secretive and dangerous organised crime gangs known as triads.
The triads are complex organisations. I understand what they are. They're a cancerous organisation which needs to be kicked around very hard.
What is the risk that Crown takes on when it gets into bed with junkets?
The risk is that they may have taken on unfortunate business associates. So the answer is both at the Australian end and at the Asian end to understand who you're doing business with.
You aren't keen to name individual junkets. Why not?
I think one needs to be very careful. Being a triad member is a huge red light to me. These people are well funded and some of them are quite dangerous.
You'd fear for your life if you were to
Well,
call out.
I'm judicious in my comments. I've taken triads on for many times and many years, but I'm also not suicidal at this stage.
Macau is an operating hub for the triads, and it's here they run certain junkets, the businesses that lure the big gamblers, the whales, to the casinos and collect their debts when things go bad. For years, Australian policing agencies have watched Asian crime bosses wash their dirty money through certain junkets. But then things changed, as some of those same junkets began operating in Australia.
There's an old saying in the cops, if you want to find the crime, you follow the money.
Yeah. Roman Quadrilig has spent decades targeting international money laundering and organised crime rings. Not only was he in charge of Border Force, before that he was an assistant commissioner with the Australian Federal Police. In 2006, he led a clandestine mission to this region. Why are so many Australian police organised crime investigations ending up here in Macau?
It's where the triads are, it's where the organised crime is, it's where the drugs are. And ultimately, to close that loop, this is where the money ends up.
His target was a triad known as The Company, which remains the most powerful drug trafficking syndicate in the world. For more than 10 years, it's been shipping billions of dollars worth of ice and cocaine into Australia. Its biggest problem has always been getting the dirty cash back to China. But in Crown Casino, triad bosses found the ideal solution.
Casinos are cash-intensive operations. There are millions of transactions and they are a soft touch for money laundering.
How perfect a system is that for a group like The Company?
Having a channel like casinos in the ecosystem with the junket operators allows the money to be repatriated without the currency actually physically being moved. So it's a perfect system of moving money without actually physically moving it.
Coming up. Breaking Bad.
Someone implicated in human trafficking.
Brothels, drugs and dirty money.
Bundles of cash coming out of a plastic bag.
Crown's deep underworld connections.
Do you think Crown cares that some of its junket operators are known organised crime figures?
The power of the dollar. No.
And how they threaten Australia's national security.
This underbelly of Chinese Communist Party influence is something that we're only just beginning to understand.
That's next on 60 Minutes.
So what we're seeing here, Nick, is the money end of a drug trafficking syndicate. To the top of your screen there, you'll see a man coming down with a green and white plastic shopping bag. That contains $191,000 in dirty cash, which has been derived from drug trafficking activities.
It's May 2012, and in a greengrocer in suburban Melbourne, an international money laundering operation is underway.
He's just walked off screen awaiting the arrival of Roy Moo, another member of the syndicate who is used to transact the money laundering at Crown Casino. His bank.
This man, Roy Moo, is a licensed junket operator at Crown Casino, which pays him to lure Asian VIP gamblers to its high roller rooms.
He'll go off screen here and meet with the runner from the drug syndicate.
But on this day, he's both a Crown junket operator and a money launderer. because he also works for a powerful triad syndicate called The Company.
And you'll see that the shopping bag has changed hands into Roy Moo's possession.
The Company is paying him.
From that location, Roy appears at the Crown Casino cashier's desk.
His task? To funnel drug money to Hong Kong via Crown Casino's bank accounts. It's bundles of cash coming out of a plastic bag.
I look at this and there are neon lights flashing. To me, this is very, very clearly, it's a money laundering activity.
Former AFP Assistant Commissioner Roman Quadvillig says Crown Casino has long been a soft target for money laundering. Roy Moo, the man handing the money over, said the reason he didn't go to a bank but he chose Crown Casino was it was far easier and far fewer questions asked. What does that tell us about Crown's processes?
Well, look, it's far simpler. In this environment where Roy Moo has an account with Crown, there is money awash through Crown Casino. This is a relatively small amount in the context of the money that moves through Crown.
This is a drop in the ocean when it comes to the likely proceeds of crime, drug trafficking and other crime being washed through Crown.
Yes, Nick, in reality, we're talking hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of dirty money that gets laundered every year through entities like Crown.
At this point, you might be asking yourself, why should Crown Casino be blamed for the actions of a single rogue junket operator? But this case isn't a one-off. Our investigation has uncovered Crown junket after Crown junket with underworld ties and suggests Crown was either willfully blind or recklessly indifferent.
A number of the entities that Crown Casino are dealing with are very clearly linked to transnational crime entities and syndicates.
Crown Casino might be well justified in saying, hang on, we're a casino, we ain't the cops, we're not ASIO, how on earth are we meant to know if so-and-so is a triad? Is that not a fair call?
Crown is a casino operator. It is a proxy financial services entity. But when you look at the risk profile of the individuals that Crown is dealing with and the exposure that it has to some of the criminality and the money laundering activity we talked about, in my view, that obligates Crown to have high levels of due diligence.
Crown's so-called due diligence is barely evident in its confidential company files. Instead, they reveal how Crown bent over backwards to work with Macau's biggest junket operator, Sun City.
Sun City key personalities have demonstrated links to numerous triad societies and organised crime figures.
In a secret report obtained by us, one of the world's largest bookmakers, the Hong Kong Jockey Club, reveals its own deep mistrust of Sun City, which has always denied any wrongdoing.
Intelligence sources advise that are of interest to the Australian authorities in relation to money laundering activities.
For these reasons, the Hong Kong Jockey Club has black banned Sun City. In contrast, Crown Casino has rolled out the red carpet, paying Sun City tens of millions of dollars, flying its VIP gamblers to Australia on private jets, helping Sun City get visas for them, and providing the junket with its very own high roller room at Crown Melbourne.
They would know the background of the junket operators.
And what happens when one of your key junket partners is exposed as a crook?
Then you need to remove that person from your list of partners you can do business with.
The revelation that Crown is working with triad-connected junkets doesn't exactly shock gaming analyst Ben Lee.
Do you think Crown cares that some of its junket operators are wanted criminals, known organised crime figures?
The power of the dollar. No.
Crown has also jumped into bed with a Melbourne brothel boss with links to alleged sex trafficking. As well as running his prostitution business, Simon Pan is also one of Crown's junket operators.
We're just a stone's throw from Crown Casino. There's number 39 Simon Pan's brothel.
Court files reveal he runs a notorious prostitution business repeatedly investigated by the federal police, and which has been implicated in organised crime and the suspected trafficking of women from Asia.
think it's extremely disturbing that the casino would have a contractual relationship with someone implicated in human trafficking.
Anti-trafficking advocate Courtney Keefe says a simple Google search reveals federal police were forced to rescue trafficked women from Pan's brothel. She says it beggars belief that Crown wouldn't know about Simon Pan.
What was going on inside its four walls?
There's been more than one AFP raid, resulting in the rescue of at least 2 women. And this is all publicly available. And it has all the hallmarks of a human trafficking situation.
But Simon Pan is small fry compared to Crown's most dubious business partner, an international criminal fugitive and Chinese Communist Party aligned figure. Meet the man they call Mr. Chinatown. He's been Crown's most lucrative Melbourne junket operator, and he's responsible for enticing China's biggest whales to Melbourne and Perth to drop millions of dollars on Crown's high roller tables. It's an arrangement that's made both him and the casino filthy rich.
What do you know about Mr. Chinatown?
I heard that he was the single biggest junket operator in Australia.
This is Mr. Chinatown's $15 million mansion in Toorak, an affluent inner-city suburb of Melbourne. And this, his spectacular country estate. A property where he takes some of Crown's highest rollers, offering them the chance to shoot guns and hunt animals. To find out more, we went undercover, answering an advertisement for a hunting tour.
Tom, are we allowed to shoot the wombat?
The whole hunting setup here is illegal.
Can I shoot it? Yeah, you can, actually.
But then, Mr. Chinatown doesn't care much for the law. So, who is the mysterious Mr. Chinatown? His real name is Tom Zhao, and we've uncovered multiple Chinese court cases which suggest a dark past. He's been investigated by Chinese authorities for serious financial crime, but he fled to Australia before he faced justice. He's also been accused in court cases of extortion and standover tactics, and even of arranging for acid to be thrown in a man's face. He's always denied any wrongdoing. In Australia, he works with Crown Casino, as well as several organisations closely aligned with the Chinese Communist Party.
The Chinese Communist Party's never been shy about working with people of dubious backgrounds.
Alex Josky is a China scholar at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. His investigation shows Mr. Chinatown heads multiple organisations in Melbourne linked to Chinese Communist Party activities. These groups work to influence the local Chinese community and the Australian political system.
This underbelly of Chinese Communist Party influence is something that we're only just beginning to understand.
Last year, the federal government passed laws to try to stop this Chinese government interference. But Josky says Mr. Chinatown's groups still operate in secrecy.
He'd be able to build political influence, build networks with politicians, and then quite possibly send that information back to Beijing. Through his junkets, he'd also be able to bring large amounts of cash over borders and also help bring personnel from China over to Australia.
Do you think that Crown Casino should be doing business with junket operators with alleged criminal pasts, running Communist Party influence outfits in Australia?
Well, the risk for Crown Casinos is that it's unwittingly becoming a conduit or a facilitator in some genuinely pernicious and possibly even illegal activities.
You think Crown's being silly or Crown just doesn't care?
I think it doesn't care.
Coming up.
The high-stakes discovery. What our police found on a private jet. The fact that the President's cousin and Crown's junket, Mr. Chinatown, were on a private jet is politically explosive. And need an Aussie visa? Just call Crown.
How many people did Crown help get visas to come to Australia?
200 or 300.
That's next on 60 Minutes.
On a winter's day in 2016, a private jet idles on the runway at Coolangatta Airport. Australian Federal Police officers think the plane might be smuggling dirty cash. They've received a security alert that one of the plane's passengers is a suspected money launderer. His name is Tom Zhao, but he's better known as Mr. Chinatown. The multi-millionaire is Crown Casino royalty. He's been their top junket operator and the man Crown relied on to fly in some of China's wealthiest people to its high roller rooms in Australia. Officers find little cash during their search, but what they do uncover is so disturbing, it's still being scrutinised by Australia's security agencies 3 years on.
So these are the flight records from the flight in question.
We can reveal that Crown Casino asked a trusted security company run by ex-cops to work for Chinatown. This arrangement led to a serving Victorian police officer who was suspended at the time to be on board that day as Mr. Chinatown's private security. The serving cop's name is Greg Leather, and we can see him in this photo providing shooting lessons at Mr. Chinatown's hunting property in country Victoria.
To me, it raises a very strong flag.
Former Border Force Chief Roman Quadvillig says law enforcement agents should not be working for Crown's high-roller junket agents.
Working security for a junket operator which is transporting people who've been flagged for money laundering, I don't think you can get a higher red flag than that.
But the red flags keep coming. Also on board the private jet that day was a passenger of intense interest to Australia's national security agency, ASIO. He's a man with extraordinary connections to China's political and business elite, someone who's known as a Communist Party princeling. His name is Ming Chai, and he is the cousin of none other than the President of China, Xi Jinping.
He's a princeling, he'd be well connected, and he has a large, significant business interests.
As a princeling, as the cousin of Xi Jinping, what sort of connections would Ming Chai have had to elite business circles, elite political circles, elite state security circles in China?
He'd have friends in the military, friends in security services, friends in business, because these are the connections that are necessary to profit in China.
China expert Alex Josky says Ming Chai's blood ties to the president place him among the country's most powerful elite. And Crown's internal files, obtained by us, reveal even more. Ming Chai is a VVIP customer of the casino, a very, very important high roller who drops millions of dollars on its tables every year. He's also a business partner of Crown's junket operators, Mr. Chinatown and brothel boss Simon Pan. He has an Australian passport and lists his business address at this mansion right here in Melbourne.
How could Xi Jinping, the most powerful politician on the planet, how could his cousin be living in Melbourne with an Australian passport and no one in Australia know it?
It's incredible. I think it just shows how much more we have to learn about China and the way the Chinese Communist Party really operates.
The fact that the president's cousin Ming Chai and Crown's junket Mr. Chinatown were on a private jet whose passengers are of intense interest to Australian security and policing agencies is politically explosive. It also begs a question. How many other Crown VVIPs flying in from overseas are of interest to Australian authorities?
My job is pretty much like applying visa for customers.
Before she was arrested in late 2016, Jenny Zhang arranged private jets and visas for Crown's VIP and VVIP customers. She says high rollers were not only given the royal treatment by Crown, but the Australian government as well.
How many people did Crown help get visas to come to Australia?
Every year, probably 300, two or 300. Crown will writing an email to consulate about they guaranteed that the customer will have a nice journey to Crown and hope they could grant a visa for him quicker.
So the Australian consulate was helping Crown give people visas?
As I know, yes.
Internal emails reveal an extremely cosy relationship between Crown and the Australian consulates in China. The company even had an emergency hotline to consular staff for when they needed quick visas.
Where we may have hundreds of millions of dollars of turnover at stake. In those situations, the consulate is very understanding and will do everything they can to help us.
You were suspicious?
Yes.
What do you think was going on?
Crown is a very big company in Australia, and I think probably like they pay more tax than anybody else, and they support the government, maybe. So probably like it's just like a back and forth between help each other.
The casinos and the entities that run them, both at a company and an individual level, are powerful. They're powerful companies and individuals with deep pockets and lots of influence.
Before he was sacked as Border Force Commissioner last year, Roman Quadvelig experienced for himself just how well connected Crown is in Australia's political scene. He says he was encouraged by several members of Parliament to start fast-tracking Crown's Chinese high rollers through our borders.
There was a time where some of your senior agency figures within Border Force came to you and said, "Boss, Crown's been pushing behind the scenes." And what was your reaction?
There were ministers that approached the agency, approached me personally, indicating that Crown and subsequently the junket operators that worked with Crown weren't receiving a facilitated service for private jets coming into Australia, into Perth and Melbourne, and were seeking some arrangements which smoothed out the processes there a little.
Do you mean they wanted a quicker passage for these mysterious, sometimes people coming in the private jets?
Essentially, being able to land on a private jet at Melbourne Airport, receive the minimal amount of clearances, put them in cars, get them into the casino and spending money.
How many ministers did Crown push for this favour?
I spoke to a sitting member of Parliament in addition to two ministers. It's very clear that there was a powerful constituency behind the entreaty.
Coming up.
When the chips are down, what's Crown's next bet?
You think because Crown brings so much money into the economy, regulators are prepared to turn a blind eye to those obvious organised crime risks?
Yes.
And Jenny counts the cost.
You're a criminal?
Of a life destroyed.
Wildfires dumped us as used napkin.
That's next on 60 Minutes.
It's been a tough few years for James Packer, in business and in love.
Has the sparkle worn off this glittering romance?
But news he's offloading almost half his stake in Crown Casino rolls the dice on a new chapter for the billionaire.
Packer has sold almost half of his stake in casino giant Crown Resorts to a Chinese entertainment company.
It also signals Australia's largest gambling empire has finally put behind it the most traumatic event to ever hit the company. The arrest of its staff in China for breaking gambling laws.
It's really hard. It's not only hard for me, I think it's hard for everybody.
The same can't be said for Jenny Jiang and her Chinese colleagues. As though being arrested and imprisoned wasn't traumatic enough, she says she felt abandoned by Crown after being convicted for gambling crimes.
You've left Crown, but Crown's really not left you, has it?
Not really. You want to pretending like nothing happened, but that's not true. You're a criminal.
By letting its sales staff in China go, Crown risked diving even deeper into the criminal underworld of junket operators. Its casinos in Melbourne and Perth still rely heavily on the Chinese high roller market. And the junket operators who entice them here are still very much active.
You call the triads a cancer. You say that it's well known that the triads are deeply involved in junkets, yet we have Crown Casino energetically and actively trying to work and form business partnerships with these same junkets. How can a responsible corporate citizen be doing such activity?
The best the corporate citizen can do when you're swimming in dark waters is at least eliminate those that are obviously triad related or organised crime related, and try your best to separate the chaff from the wheat. I mean, that is an effort, I think, that's worth making.
Former Police Chief Steve Vickers now runs his own political and corporate risk consultancy in Hong Kong. He says casinos must have robust vetting programs to weed out suspected criminals from their business dealing.
You will never eliminate all triad involvement in junkets. It's just not possible, and it's not an easy job. But it does require one four-letter word, W-I-L-L. You need the will to do that.
The masses of data leaked to us clearly shows Crown lacks that will. And according to industry veteran Ben Lee, so too does Victoria's casino regulator.
Victorian Casino Commission is widely regarded as very pro-Crown, very friendly towards Crown.
The casino regulator, which is meant to be keeping an eye on Crown, is pro-Crown.
Yes.
Why is it regarded as pro-Crown?
I can't recall any major event where Crown has been suitably penalised for infractions of the law.
You think because Crown brings so much money into the economy?
Into the Victorian economy, yes.
Regulators prepared to turn a blind eye to those obvious organised crime risks?
Yes.
Not much chop for the people of Victoria who want a real regulator?
No.
Roman, how important will the Chinese high roller market be to Crown's Sydney Barangaroo vision?
Oh, the Chinese market's critical.
In Sydney, Crown is building a shiny new monument to gambling. But its success will be hugely dependent on the work of its junket operators.
This entire Crown Barangaroo complex is targeted towards the high wealth whales in Asia.
The $2.2 billion casino at Barangaroo is exclusively for high rollers. But as a former cop with decades of experience in money laundering and organised crime investigations, Roman Quadvilig questions whether Crown can be trusted to run yet another casino on home soil.
Why is nobody targeting Crown to say, is Crown fit to hold a gaming licence?
Look, if I were to issue a report card, I wouldn't give it a pass at this point in time, not from what I've seen. I know that organised crime is prolific in Australia. We are awash with drugs and drug money. Crown has an obligation to ensure that its anti-money laundering systems are in place and operating correctly. I think it needs to do a hell of a lot more.
And it seems Crown shareholders agree. They've launched a class action against Crown to recoup the lost value of their shares following the debacle in China. They allege Crown knew all along what they were doing there was illegal.
Do you think Crown Casino deserves to have a licence in Australia?
I don't think so. They lie to the staff, and we feel like we've been used and then get dumped.
By taking a job with Australia's biggest casino company, Jenny Zhang's life has been forever changed.
Everybody has a criminal record, and in China, the criminal record is a big issue.
But by speaking out, Jenny wants Crown to be held accountable for its actions.
Why you fire us, all of us, and especially who made so much money for you? Why you dumped us as used napkin?
Like a used napkin?
Yes.
James Packer didn't want to be interviewed for this story, but he told us he had no knowledge or involvement in the issues we've raised tonight. And despite being the major shareholder and public face of the company, he emphasised he was not a director of Crown Resorts at the time its employees were imprisoned in China, and hadn't been for many months before that. A Crown Resort spokesperson in Melbourne told us the company doesn't discuss its relationships with junket operators and other individuals. We were also told that even though 19 of its staff pleaded guilty and were convicted and imprisoned in China, Crown didn't breach Chinese law. It seems corporate arrogance has hit a new low. Nick Mackenzie will have more revelations on this story in tomorrow's 9 newspapers, including The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald.